economics and data analytics as core combinations for pursuing specializations in for pursuing economic honors in and the importance of this course and how Sai University, the curriculum designed at Sai University caters to such a modern sort of a calling for development economics and data analytics for understanding the economic processes. So, in this webinar, we'll just introduce about the economics and the role of development economics within the larger discipline of economics, and how there is a mutual interaction and importance of data analytics within development economics. Often, in our understanding, when we talk about economics, we think of data analytics as a combination with economics. But when we talk about development economics, we often think of that as residing somewhere not as something that requires too much heavy data analytics. However, as we will see in this webinar and discuss with and address your questions as well on understanding these importance of development economics and data analytics. So, if we can move to the next slide, Tahir. Thank you. So, what is economics? Just to give a broad picture of how we understand as what is economics and what is an economy. So, if you've joined this webinar, I'm sure that you all might have had some brush with the idea of what is economics. You might have studied some basic courses at your school level, or you might be generally interested in understanding or studying economics as a course. So, what is economics? As we understand it, economics is something or how the society organizes itself to fulfill its basic wants and desires and needs. So, what does it mean? Like the society comes together and decides to, each individual within the society requires basic food, shelter, clothing. So, economics is a study of how the society itself organizes this production of goods and services that fulfill the basic needs like food, shelter, and clothing, as well as organize the distribution and consumption of various kinds of commodities. So we have these three fundamental pillars of understanding what an economy is, which is production, distribution, and consumption. So that is what we study. We introduce at the very beginning, like what so a few courses that give a broad historical overview of what economics is, how the economies of the world have transitioned over time, uh, and how has the production process, how different kinds of goods and commodities have been produced over time, and how that processes have changed over time. For example, currently we live in a world, in a highly globalized world, and to produce even one iPhone, it has to go through 40 different countries. Some resources have to be mined in Africa, then its processing happens in some other country, then its chips are made in China, Singapore, the technology comes from somewhere else, and finally everything is assembled together to constitute one phone. So how did we evolve from like a single civilization that used to reside along the riversides, and we have come to this a broader globalized, highly interactive, integrated economy where the world entirely has shrunk in its size. So we understand these theories. We try to look at how economies have evolved, how economics has evolved, and within that broader framework of economics, what role does development economics play, or what is the importance of development economics as a course, as a discipline, or as a specialization within BA Economic Honors? So if you have studied economics, you might have heard these names like Adam Smith, David Ricardo, Malthus. These people, though they are called as economists, but what they were basically talking about was growth and development of the nations. In fact, Adam Smith's book name is an inquiry into the nature and causes of wealth of nations, which basically looks into how a nation can grow and develop over time. And throughout all the economists throughout history, we have seen focus on the growth and development. So there are various fundamental questions that we will deal with, like first, as I mentioned, production, distribution, and consumption of various goods and services. And also we will look at what constitutes growth and development, how can a nation grow and develop. And further, we will also ask this sort of a fundamental question in the sense that why does these contradictions in today's world exist? Why does poverty and inequality exist alongside growth and development? Where the economies across the world have been experiencing high rates of growth, uh, though poverty and inequality might have reduced in some places, but poverty and inequality continues to be a major problem and issue even in most of the major economies across the world. For example, in India as well. As Tahir later on will show you some data how growth, poverty, and inequality are actually interrelated aspects. For example, if India is experiencing growth, and growth means improvement in overall economic well-being, improvement in incomes of the individuals, and so on. But simultaneously, that it should also reduce the poverty levels in the economy. That is, people who are not able to earn even a basic level of income to satisfy their basic needs like food, shelter, and so, with growth, poverty has reduced. But it is also possible that with growth, poverty might not reduce. Now, what is the connecting factor here? It is the inequality. Because with growth, if the inequality is also increasing, then poverty might actually not reduce. With the entire growth in the income might get concentrated in the hands of very few people in the economy. Tahir, please, next slide. So that is what our broader understanding of economics and development economics would be in terms of the simultaneity of this process of growth and development and the continuing existence and persistence of this global crisis. What are the global crises that we focus on in our courses? It's inequality, poverty, and climate change. For example, even now, around the World Bank has given its poverty line as $2.15 per day at purchasing power parity rates, which is that if anyone is earning below $2.515 in a day, then they are considered to be extremely poor. And currently, one can say that around 700 million people across the world live below this extreme poverty level. So, as a role of a student, as a role of a student who is a citizen and individual, a citizen of a nation, we all have, as who want to contribute to the society, who want to be part of the society and contribute to the society, understanding these issues, understanding the core of these issues, what causes this, and uh, what leads to improvement in the situation of the economies of India as well as globally, one needs to understand what drives these processes, what drives growth, and how to make that growth equitable and how to make that growth work for every individual in the society. Particularly, this development economics has become important after the World War II period. If I go back quickly into the history, when World War II saw some horrible things, and that led many nations across the world and all people around the world to realize that we needed like something as basic as human rights that need to be guaranteed to the people across the world. So that actually brings sort of a very different understanding to growth and development as compared to what it was before World War II. So this broadening of our understanding, bringing in human rights, bringing in cultural, social values, bringing in how the society itself is related to the economy. That is where our starting point also is in the curriculum and particularly the course on development economics, which is that we do not take economy as something that is separate from the society. Rather, economy is what we say in economic terms is economy is embedded in society. Not only that, economy as economy changes, the social relations around us also change, as we might see, say, for example, with the changes in the after liberalization period, we see the society, the structure of the family, the structure of the markets, how we interact with one another has had a change, which you can, of course, talk to your parents or your grandparents, and you will see the changes that have happened. And particularly, the society also influences the economy. For example, caste, gender, all these aspects, of course, also interact with how production happens, how goods are distributed, and so on and so forth. So we see that with the economy is part of the society, and this economy society combination is part of the larger environment, the ecology of the planet Earth, of which we are part of. So everything is part of this embedded system, and that is the starting point from where which we begin. Uh, Next slide, please. Oh, so Tahir, perhaps you can explain more details with some data points or the interaction of or the importance of understanding the development economics and use of various analytical tools provided by data analytics as important for this, not only for your understanding of economics and the reality around the world, but also to make you suitable for the job market after this.
Yeah. Mhm. Thank you, Sahil. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. So far, we have seen the scope of economics and particularly development economics in in terms of understanding economic aspects of our social world. So, as you have seen, the questions that Dr. Sahil has raised in the previous slides are not easy questions to answer, at least not always easy questions to answer or understand. So, for instance, a lot of the times, one of the motivations to study economics for students is to understand poverty, the causes of poverty, and therefore, of course, to aspire for a society with less inequality and poverty. And I think it's a fair expectation to have if someone is joining an economics program. But I must say that it's not a straightforward. There's no straightforward answer to these big questions of poverty, inequality, climate change. As Dr. Sahil has mentioned, it's not just about economics. There is more to that. The economy is an embedded system in the society, and we're operating in different cultural norms and institutions, etc. Okay, so while we understand that it is not always easy to answer this question, with the recent developments in the availability of data and computational power, what we are seeing is the rise in the use of data to make sense of things. Okay, so it is in that context, I'll just make three brief comments. The relationship between theory and data, the current expectations from the job market from an economics undergraduate or graduate student, and what we offer at Sai University that covers these aspects, both in terms of research and understanding the economy, and also at the same time in terms of expectations from the job market. Okay, so as I said, the first point I'm going to make is the relationship between the theory and data. To understand that, let's take a quick look at two graphs. So the graph that you're seeing right now is from World Inequality Report 2022. It is graph is made by IMF, International Monetary Fund. It is coming from this report. Okay, so let's try to understand what this graph is. So Dr. Sahil has been talking about income inequality, climate change, how the effects of production on environment, etc. So the same thing we are looking at a more concrete level in terms of data. So if you look at the graph, we have four categories: population, wealth, income, and global carbon dioxide emissions. Okay, so how do we read this graph? So in terms of population, we have top 1% population, the next 9%, the middle 40%, and the bottom 50%. Okay, so when you look at top 1% population, what we see is that they hold almost 38% of the wealth, 19% of the income. Okay, that's first data point. So for instance, if Indian economy is making 100 rupees in 2025, 19 rupees go to one top 1% population. And you can see that that inequality is in fact more striking in terms of wealth inequality. Okay, because as the income inequality is higher, people tend to accumulate wealth. Okay, so that's our first data point. And if you see the last data point for top 1% population, they emit 17% of global CO2 emissions. Okay, and similarly, you can see that the next 10%, again, the next 10%, also you can see in the graphical representation, though we don't have numbers, they also hold significant proportion of wealth, income, and also contribute significantly to the CO2 emissions. And similarly, you have middle 40% and bottom 50%. So another striking stylized fact from this graph is the following. If you look at the bottom 50%, they hold very little wealth, and they earn very little income, and they also contribute very little to the global CO2 emissions. For instance, think of all the people who are owning private helicopters. Those are the people who are going to emit more CO2. So that's why we see that sort of relation between wealth, income inequality, and CO2 emissions. Okay, so before we understand why looking at data is very important, let's quickly take a look at another graph as well. Okay, so if you look at this graph, this is coming from database on Indian economy made by Data for India team. So this graph on x-axis we simply have year 2002, 2005, etc. Okay, on y-axis we have number of individuals who have a bank account. Okay, so this might having a bank account might seem something simple, and we might expect everyone to have it. But you can see that it's only very recently that people have started having bank accounts, and within that you also see, if you look at the graph, there are two lines. Okay, the yellow line and the bluish line. So you can see that within that there is a huge gender disparity. You can see that the females almost hold 50%, the men almost hold 50% more bank accounts than women. Okay, so I hope I've explained the two graphs clearly. So let's get back to the point on um, data and doing economics, why it is relevant for development economics and job market currently. Okay, so what we have seen are very important data points that help us at least in two ways. Okay, one is to inform to the theory, another one is to inform to the policymakers. If you if we go back to the previous slide, we can clearly see that there's a lot of income inequality. Okay, so and generally as a society, we if we prefer to have a more egalitarian society, that is more equal society, the answer is straightforward. We want less inequality, right? And how do we achieve that? I mean, again, that might also be a very easy answer. If you ask someone, they'll tell that maybe we should tax the income, tax the wealth, and redistribute it. That will make the distribution more equal, and everyone will get more equal share of wealth and income, etc. Okay, so while that seems like a very straightforward answer, if you ask economists what do we do in this scenario, I guarantee you that there's no simple answer, and everyone tends to give different answers based on their own theoretical understanding of the relationship between these variables. So, some might say that we cannot tax, because if we tax, that will disincentivize the people who are holding a lot of wealth, and therefore they are not going to invest and they are not going to run business, therefore it will increase the unemployment, etc. So you can see the logical reasoning here. Therefore it will only cause more problems to the bottom section of the population because of unemployment and other kinds of economic distress. Okay. um, so again, the second data point. So most of the times economics is really about making people's lives better. So to understand whether we are doing that job or not, sometimes it's important to look at basic data like this: people holding bank accounts, number of villages having electricity. Like if I ask the question, how many villages do you think have no electricity in India, one might, given all the development that we see in the cities, one might find it hard to imagine that there are still villages that have no electricity. But if we look at data that is available publicly, which is Antyodaya data, we'll find that there are actually significant share of villages which still don't have basic amenities, say electricity or irrigation facilities, etc. Okay, so in that sense, looking at this data, this kind of data, especially this kind of data, will be very helpful in have that conversation between all theory and empirics. So therefore, they can be in a conversation, and therefore they can inform the policy makers with a more nuanced understanding. Okay, so that is where we're coming from when we say that data analysis is very important skill to have. And it's not just an important skill, it also informs us about the validity or the relevance of theory. And at the same time, currently in the job market, given the recent developments in the availability of data and computational power, data analysis is a requirement from economics graduate for various kind of corporate research or research roles, or roles in think tanks, etc. Okay, so within that, in the roles where development economics or economics research, these kind of understanding data of this nature and working with it is one of the requirements from the job market. Okay, so now let me quickly talk a little bit about, given this context of importance of development economics in addressing major issues, and with that the role of data analytics. What are we doing at Sai University that helps a student to master all those things? Okay, let me start with a quote by John Maynard Keynes. John Maynard Keynes is a famous British economist. Okay, let's see what he's saying. Master economist must possess a rare combination of gifts. He must reach a high standard in several different directions, and must combine talents not often found together. He must be a mathematician, historian, statesman, philosopher in some degree. He must understand symbols and speak in words. He must contemplate the particular in terms of the general, and touch abstract and concrete in the same flight of thought. He must study the present in the light of the past for the purposes of the future. So as you can see, that's a very deep thought from Keynes, where he's saying that the role of economist is to understand and to think from the perspective of these different roles, so that we can imagine a different future. Okay, so within this context, what are we doing at Sai University? So Sai University, to study economics, there are two options. One is BA honors in economics, or BA honors in politics, philosophy, and economics. So along with your major in economics or politics, philosophy, and economics, you can select your minor in one of the following areas: computer science, psychology, philosophy and psychology, artificial intelligence and media, or management. Okay, so now let me quickly run through a couple of details of the economics courses. Okay, so on one hand, we have foundations course, which are mandatory courses for people who are enrolling in economics major, where they'll be studying all these courses: statistics, maths, principles, foundations of economics. In foundations of economics, we'll do a survey of economic thought from Adam Smith to John Maynard Keynes, which we have seen in the previous slide. and micro, macro. And at the same time, we have other electives, which are development economics, global political economy, and data analytics with our program, which will help you in doing the kind of analysis that I have just shown in the previous couple of slides. Okay, so these are the graduation requirements. So to get a major in economics, you have to do a minimum of 13 courses, eight of which are required courses that we have just seen, and you get to do five more electives, which can be in economics or cross-listed in some other courses as well. Okay, and similarly, one can obtain a minor in economics as well, where you have to do four compulsory courses and two elective courses. Okay. Now let's quickly move on to what are the different kind of opportunities available if one does BA economics. Okay, so if one does BA economics and strongly grounded in data analysis with a strong theoretical background, there's several opportunities available to them, and I'll just list some of them. So one is data analytics or generalist, journalist in terms of data journalism, or data analytics in terms of joining corporate or think tanks, etc. Then, of course, there are more core research roles where you would assist as a research assistant to projects that are happening. Most of the times, these projects are field based, and if you have heard of randomized controlled trials, most of them happen, a lot of them happen in India. Then you have a lot of non-government organizations as well, which welcome economists. Then, of course, we have more government specific government roles such as RBI's Grade B or Indian Economic Service, etc. Okay, and also after once people have bachelors in economics, which they can also go ahead and pursue masters in economics and PhD in economics, or they can also, once you have masters, that will actually open up more opportunities in different sectors, in corporate sector, in economic consultancy firms, and also in different government departments like Niti Aayog or Ministry of Finance, etc. No, my colleague Sahil will take over again to go through to again coming back to development economics and the kind of research that is happening in development economics.
Thank you, Tahir. So as Tahir was mentioning that most of like places either focus on theory or they focus on data analytics. But and that is where we at Sai University come to sort of present an overall sort of a combination of these two. How, as Sai was mentioning, that theory and data analytics both feed into each other, and so theory guides empirical analysis, and empirical analysis in turn informs theory. So we might have some idea of how things are working, and then we collect some data on that, and then we analyze it based on the theories that we have developed. And once we have analyzed those data, and that analysis might give us more information about how the reality is or how the things are working, which might help us in improving theory, which again will improve theory require more data analytics. And in the present era of big data and use of different AI tools and different programming tools, this sort of an interaction and integration of development economics and data analytics becomes extremely important. Just to give you an overview of the major international organizations that particularly work in the areas and the issues that we have discussed in the beginning. For example, United Nations Department of Economic and Social Affairs, United Nations Development Program, United Nations Research Institute for Social Development, International Labour Office, Food and Agricultural Organization, United Nations Conference on Trade and Development, and as you might have seen recently, how even the change of trade policies might affect different nations in a very different way, right? Because with the increasing talks of tariffs and how it might impact our say for example India's exports and imports, how it is going to impact the overall growth, and in turn how the growth is going to impact inequality and poverty, and what will happen to the agricultural sector, what will happen to the manufacturing sector, and so on and so forth. uh, Next slide please. So just to give you sort of a motivating uh, example of the notable economists who have specialized in developing economics. For example, recently in 2019, Abhijit Banerjee and Esther Duflo won the Nobel Prize in economics. They are both development economists. Amartya Sen, who won the first Asian Nobel Prize, was again development economics. He talked about the capabilities of the individuals, that we have to focus on the capabilities and the functionings of the individual, that my capability to be able to fulfill my requirement of food, my capability of fulfilling my requirement for clothing, my capability to be able to ride a bike from point A to point B, that gives me freedom of movement. So that is what all these people were talking about and still talk about, and these issues become even more and more important as we continue to grow and develop. You see, these issues started after World War II, but even now, after 2000, in the new decade, with advancement in technology, AI, and so on, these issues become even more important because people do talk about AI and its impact on jobs and so on and so forth. But AI and the huge vast structures required to support AI might have various different kinds of consequences also for the environment. There is huge amount of e-waste that comes out of AI that leads to pollution. And so then economic policy, one has to combine this economic policy, the use of AI, data analytics, and various other aspects of social, cultural, and political understanding to make a comprehensive policy in the minds of people. So, and that requires a much more comprehensive and much more interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary approach to economic issues. And when I say economic issues, these are socio-economic issues because we as part of society are also part of economy, and we part of economy are also part of society. Next slide, please. So we have some more names of the professors who have been doing wonders in terms of contributing to theoretical and empirical research in terms of understanding various development issues. We have Jayati Ghosh, Michael Todaro, Pranab Bardhan, Kaushik Basu. Next slide, please. So, as Tahir was mentioning about different kinds of job opportunities, so in this slide we particularly focus on the specific organizations like NGOs, specific NGOs, think tanks, and research institutes where one can work and contribute to overall social benefit and economic development. Center for Policy Research, Observer Research Foundation, Climate Policy Initiative, JPAL. JPAL is largely affiliated to Esther Duflo and Abhijit Banerjee's work. Uh, and various other organizations like Research and Information System for Developing Countries, etc. So we have a Center for Budget Governance and Accountability, Janagra, CBPS in Bangalore, IHT, National Council for Applied Economic Research, Foundations for Agrarian Study, Institute of Economic Growth. Next slide, please. Economic Cell, Public Affairs Center, like lot of places where recently, and most of these organizations have also recently started because these issues have become more and more important as people realize the impact and the consequences of the processes of growth and development. Uh, Even within the corporate sector, they have started this development consulting where they hire people, particularly from economics background, particularly from development economics, who might be able to provide consultancy services to various kinds of government policy initiatives and so on and so forth. For example, Samagra, Intellicap. Big Fours, even EY, Deloitte, PwC, KPMG, they also hire dev consultants. BCG, McKinsey, Renew, Satwa Consulting. BCG, in fact, also works with various government, state governments to improve, say, for example, the state education curriculum and so on and so forth. All right. So that is broadly what our understanding is and how we approach economics, development economics, and the importance of data analytics within this particular thing. And we try to cover all these topics, cover all these issues, and also make the students realize the importance of these issues and motivate them to follow these issues in their life, at least to be aware of them. So, and as one can see, like this different combinations, for example, either if you're doing a major in economics, you might do a minor in computer science. We in economics give you basic training of R programming and so on, and you can have much deeper understanding or much deeper programming knowledge of Python and other programming softwares by doing a minor, say, computer science. And you can also do a minor in AI, machine learning, which gives you an even more access to even more number of tools which you can use to analyze economic data and economic issues. And together, I would say that it becomes like a very sort of a deadly combination for to that puts you first in the job market. All right, so that's it from our side. Thank you very much, everyone. So we will be open to taking questions or any doubts that you might have, the participants. Please feel free to ask questions or like anything you might have in terms of generally economics at Sai University or general economics. Sure. So we have this combined major, philosophy, politics, and economics, PPE, which is sort of a very sought after course abroad as well as now it's gaining importance in India as well. And we have been running that course for 3 years now. Uh, so the first batch will be graduating this year, and the politics, philosophy, politics, and economics is a very important course. We not only have courses from uh, philosophy, specific courses in politics, and specific courses in economics. And then we also have a combination of various courses that provides an interaction between philosophy, politics, and economics. And we will have a specific special seminar by having all the philosophy faculty, politics faculty, and economics faculty in another seminar where we'll discuss in detail on about these courses. So, just to give another example, say for example, if we are talking about inequality or poverty again, so philosophy, politics, and economics course will not only deal with uh, what are the philosophical understanding or the root of the philosophical root of understanding inequality. It comes from John Rawls' ideas of justice. People should be given justice. Then, as I talked about, the human rights, which was a political aspect that came after the World War II, and we have already discussed about the economic aspects of inequality. So, combined together, imagine the kind of an understanding an individual, a student will have coming out of philosophy, politics, and economics. as compared to someone who's just specializing in one course or another. And in addition, even in PPE, like we also have data analytics and so on. So combining all together, it will be like a very good package as for students to pursue in their life as a career. So next question is what I hope I have answered your question, and don't worry, we will soon have a seminar on special webinar on PPE. What do you learn in economics at SciU? Uh, as Tahir had shown a list of courses, Foundations of Economics, Principles of Economics, Micro, Macro, Development Economics, and then you can also specialize in various other streams like financial economics and so on. We have courses on data analytics and so on and so forth. What is the admission criteria? I think you can directly get in touch with the admissions team. You can just call on their number. They're very helpful, and I'm sure they will uh, clarify all your doubts as soon as possible. Any other queries or questions? Ty, would you want to add anything?
Yeah, so what do you learn at Sai University? You can, in particularly in economics major, so you can think of in terms of broadly in terms of theory and in terms of tools and methods. Okay, so in terms of theory, the foundational courses like foundations of economics, principles of economics, they mostly focus on how economics as a thought has evolved and how do we think in terms of economist in terms of economics language and as an economist those aspects. On the other hand, we have courses that are more in terms of tools and methods which are applied probability for economics, then electives like econometrics, applied mathematics for economics, then data analytics with R program. So you can think of it as broadly theory on one side and tools and methods on other side. And yeah, that's what we offer at SIU as an economics major. If you're minor, of course, if someone is pursuing a minor in economics, that's a different story because only they can do only 6 courses, so that limits in terms of how many courses one can pursue.
So within, if you are more interested in to learn what specific topics perhaps we are going to cover within these different courses, then perhaps you can we can have a meeting, or let me just give you a broad topic. So for example, in microeconomics, if you have already studied microeconomics, you know we start with consumer behavior, producer behavior, profit maximization, cost minimization, the structure of the firms, competition, monopoly, oligopoly, monopsony, and so on and so forth. In macroeconomics, we deal with the specific, we introduce what is growth, how do we calculate growth, what is unemployment, how do we calculate unemployment, what is inflation, how do we calculate inflation, what is inequality, how do we calculate inequality, and so on and so forth. And then we also understand various relationships between, say for example, how is inflation related to unemployment, is it related, and how is it related, and how is growth related to unemployment. If growth increases, unemployment reduces, employment increases. So all these kinds of relationships we're trying to understand. And say for example, in environment economics, we deal with specific questions of how do we optimize the use of natural resources. So some economists, some theories would answer that we should have property rights. We should determine property rights where an individual has access to, or an organization or an institution has an access to a certain resource. For example, most of the mining that happens is largely public sector, is owned by state. So that reduces or takes care of the natural resource, doesn't let too too much exploitation of the resources. For example, the often given example is in terms of a lake. So people going there for to a lake for fishing. Now, if there is no restriction in terms of access to lake, like a lake is a common resource, then anyone and everyone can go and fish. And soon we will be that lake would be empty without any fishes. So how do we solve this particular problem? In that particular regard, we have then property should be determined. Uh, it should be made into private property where you have, say, for example, an entry ticket to access the lake for fishing, and that would reduce the amount of people. Which is better, financial economics or environmental economics or management economics? Well, depends on what your interests are, because all three are upcoming fields and important fields. So, for example, financial economics has been important for some time now. Environmental economics takes care of certain kinds of issues. If someone is interested in understanding sustainable development, and then one can study, focus more on environmental economics. If one wants to study more in terms of, say, for example, now there is a new field also in terms of climate finance, which sort of combines environmental economics and financial economics. For business related, then I guess you might have to go for either financial economics or management economics, and might take one or two courses from environmental economics just to have a like a deep understanding of issues. Any other questions or queries or doubts? I hope I have answered your question. Tyre, would you like to add something?
No, I don't have anything to add.
Oh, if there are no more questions, then Nalyapan, do should we close the meeting webinar? All the attendees who are part of this webinar, you're free to write to us anytime if you have any queries or doubts or you want to discuss it further. So you feel free to write to us on our email IDs, which are available on the Sai University website, and we would be more than happy to address your doubts and provide you any more clarifications that you might need.